door, the sound that that made, and the feeling that that had was an influencer in how they purchased a car. And that's all true, right? And Scott, hopefully I'm not wrong about that. But all these things influence people, right? So, big agency, trendy chairs, right? That's and that's not our DC office, by the way. That's a trendier office. Where I started was with this super crappy website. Back in 1997, when I had this vision that restaurants needed websites. And I was inspired by the internet, and I thought every restaurant was going to want to have a website. And so why not start a site to build these websites, right? So my entire service would be build websites for the restaurants, get them online so that people could read about the restaurants, see the menus, decide where to go, send restaurants an email, right? We didn't have like online booking forms or any of that stuff in 97. So they could send the restaurant an email and they would get a reservation, right? And it failed spectacularly. And the reason why it failed spectacularly is because in 1997, I couldn't convince any restaurants in DC that they needed a website, right? I just couldn't explain to them that people were there, and obviously a lot fewer people were there at that time, but the timing was wrong. But that's where I started, and that's where I learned from. Where I moved to was going to South by Southwest in 2007. And in 2007, South by Southwest, how many people have been to South by Southwest? So, for those of you who haven't, South by Southwest is an interactive music and film festival in Austin, Texas for about 10 days. The interactive part is like the first couple days. Mainly it got known as a music festival. It's been going for 20 plus years. Huge, huge event. And I went there for the first year working for a music client. And I met this guy in jeans and a t-shirt. And he said he'd been reading my blog and he wanted to take me out for a coffee. And I thought, well, I'm already there. I may as well, maybe I can help him. Maybe I can do something for him. So he tells me about this book that he's got coming out and that he has been reading about using social media for it. And he wanted to just pick my brain and ask me some thoughts and ideas. So I meet with this guy. I talked to him. He seems like a pretty cool guy. We stayed in touch. His book, The 4-Hour Workweek, comes out. Rises to the #1 bestseller in the New York Times. Stays there for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's still on the top 10, I believe. He is, right? Huge, huge book. He's got a pilot for a Discovery Channel show. This guy's name is Tim Ferriss, right? How many people have read The 4-Hour Workweek or heard about it? Right, so humongous book. Now, here's a guy who I didn't know, had a chance to meet with because I believe in helping people like a lot of people have talked about, but also in the karma of that, right? So a couple months after that, I talked to him and I said, you know what, I've got an idea for a book, but I don't really have a publisher or anything like that. And he says, well, I've got this great agent. Let me introduce you to my book agent. I go to the book agent and I explain to him the idea for my book, that personality is what matters in business. It's not about whether you have a blog or not. It's about the personality and authenticity of the business. Right? That was the premise that I wanted to write about. Because I saw so many people writing blogging books, how to have a great blog. And I thought that the real trend in business was more than that. And blogs were just a part of it. Pitched the agent on that. He said, sounds great. I think I can sell it, but I need a proposal. Did a 10-page PowerPoint. Sent that to the agent. The agent pitched the book, and 3 weeks later, I had a book deal with McGraw-Hill. Right? That's how fast it happened. Off of a 10-page PowerPoint, which, by the way, you can go to the book website and download it if you want to see what a book proposal looks like, or my book proposal looks like. It's totally open. PersonalityNotIncluded.com. There's a section on there where you can see all the thought process and the proposal and everything. Right? The reason why I raised that is because it all came from a random coffee with a random guy that I didn't know, that I took the time to meet with, who introduced me to someone who knew you, right? Who knows you, right? Like Finch said. And that's what led to one of the major pieces of success that I've had so far in my personal brand. Right? Because launching a book is huge for your personal brand. Whether you go the publisher and agent route that I did, or whether you publish it yourself, you still have something that's a thought leadership piece that's out there that defines part of what you believe in. The other thing that I did was I knew that I needed a big name behind it, and I targeted Guy Kawasaki as the person I wanted to write the foreword. Now at that point I didn't know him, and I could have sent him an email out of the blue, but I figured I need some way for him to have heard of me. I need him to know me before I pitch him to do the foreword for the book. So 6 months before I was going to pitch him to do the foreword for the book, I entered a contest on SlideShare called the World's Best slideshow contest, world's best presentation contest, because I knew that Guy Kawasaki was one of the judges. And I figured if I could do a great presentation and I could win something in that, then he would have heard of me. And that way, 6 months later, when I went to him and asked him to do the intro, it wouldn't be out of the blue. It would be, hey, remember me? I'm the guy that did that presentation, and he looked at it and he liked it, and so on and so forth. So I entered the contest. I got an honorable mention. He was one of the judges, and he knew of me at that point because he judged the things, and because I, not one little thing, but I did well enough that he knew about me. And when I went to him and I asked him to do the forward, and I sent this great email, and I said, you're going to love this book, it's going to be great, and remember me from the slideshow thing. And he sent me back this really nice email, and he said, sounds like a great idea, I don't do forwards. No thanks. And at that point, I had to decide, okay, well, do I go to plan B, or do I try and kind of push a little bit further? And that's always a tough thing, right? Because you don't really know someone, it's on email. Do you push harder and kind of be that guy that doesn't go away? Or do you just let it go and move on, right? What's the best thing to do? And so I followed up, and I decided to push a little bit further, and I said, look, let me just send you the first chapter by PDF, because I think you're really going to like it. If at that point you don't think that it's worth it, no problem, no hard feelings, I'll just let it go. So I did that. I sent him the first chapter, and a couple days later he gets back to me and he says, if I do it, when do you need it by? To which I responded, we'll build our entire timeline around you. Whenever you can do it, we'll just work with it. And he said, okay, well, I can do it by this point, and that's how I got him to do the forward, right? And so now the book has a forward by Guy Kawasaki, and it's my first book, and even if you've never heard of me, a lot of the people who I was trying to sell this book to have heard of him. So having his name on there was very important for me, because as a first book, I'm lesser known, right? So one of the things that I think is really, really important here is this idea of what's your abilities, right? And if I ask you, how many people here know how to draw? Maybe like 25% of the room. If you were all 5 years old and I asked you that question, everyone would raise their hands, right? Every single person would raise their hand. Who knows how to draw? Everybody knows how to draw, right? Now, what happens between the moment when you're 5 years old and the moment to today when you realized you couldn't draw, or you thought you couldn't draw, right? Is it your drawing talent gets worse over time? No, of course not. It's your belief in what that means, right? And I purposely tricked you a little bit by showing you a real drawing, right? I mean, you probably couldn't draw that, or maybe you could. Maybe the 25% of people will raise their hand, but maybe everybody else couldn't. But this idea that creativity is only for certain people, that drawing is only for certain people, that social media is only for certain people, is always out there, right? And you may not consider yourself a writer. You may not consider yourself an artistic person. And I deal with this all the time because I work in a creative agency, right? And when you work in a creative agency and you show up with your black shirt and your torn jeans, people expect you to be creative, right? That's what you're walking into. And that's your role, right? And so the expectation's there. And if you show up in a different situation, people don't expect you to be creative, right? If you ask people, where does creativity come from in your organization, they'll usually point to the more creative job roles, right? The art director, the marketing person, that's where the creativity comes from. But in so many different ways, that's what defines how you can become that brand and that individual that you want to be, because it's all about creativity and it's all about innovation. And that doesn't just mean can you draw or can you not draw. So what if we were able to think in terms of the personal brand of each of us being something more than just what we do and what we feel like we're capable of doing? What if we could define ourselves as something that was what we wanted to be and what we were capable of doing, and make a promise that we could keep, but not necessarily one that we know how to do already? 3 weeks ago, I was invited to participate in a panel about the role of digital technology in the future of Africa. And great topic. And it was a really amazing panel. It was a journalist, it was a student who was straight from Nigeria, and another guy. And they were all experts on Africa, either by being African or by having lived in Africa. And I've never lived in Africa. I've never been to kind of the sub-Saharan Africa, but I know digital technology. And I said yes. to the panel. And the reason why I said yes is because I knew that I could bring something to that discussion that wasn't just about an expertise on Africa. It was about an expertise on how people get information and how they're influenced. And the reason why I also said yes is because I knew that in preparation for that, I would learn about Africa. I would get ready for it because I'm the sort of person that will get ready for the situation.